really far from now. So as you said, my name is Cyril Mottier, and today I'm going to talk to you about seamless linking to your app. So some quick notes. So I know that the title is not that obvious. Actually, the idea behind this talk is to explain you how to tear down the walls between your application. And by application, I mean like an Android app, an iOS app, or your website. And all of those apps are actually part of a single entity, which is called a product. Okay? So the idea behind this talk is to explain you how you can tear down the walls between those apps so that the user can transparently migrate from one app to another. Okay? Because, well, as you said, I'm mostly focused on Android, so I will focus mainly on Android in this talk, web and Android, but I will also try to give you some hints and some links to the iOS equivalent when they exist. And finally, you will see in the slides that I use an application as an example, and this application is called Trainline. So Trainline was the company I was working for 3 months ago. Now I'm freelance. I decided to keep those slides because, well, they were created before when I was at Trainline, and also because I think Trainline is a good example how you can, well, do seamless linking to your application. Okay, so the first part, when you want to tear down the walls between the web and your mobile application, is obviously to make sure that your application is handling the links to your website, okay? And this is what we call linking to your app. So it's basically to tell your application to handle some links that are part of your application. And this, in Android, is possible thanks to a simple tag or a simple object, which is called intent filter. So the intent filter can be defined in the Android manifest, and the idea is to basically define the anatomy of the links that you want to catch, okay? Catching links is like Pokemons, actually. You gotta catch them all, and that's probably what most developers would think about that. Actually, don't think about that as Pokemons. It's really similar to Pokemons, but don't be too aggressive. What I mean by that is that when you're catching links, you could, for instance, if you're Google, it's not something really respectful to catch Yahoo links or Bing links. Please try only to keep links that you're catching only yours, so your domains, basically. And another point for that is that don't try to catch everything. So for instance, if your website is google.com, you don't want to catch maps.google.com, you don't want to catch play.google.com. You only want to catch what your application can handle. So the idea is basically that most of the time, a mobile application contains a subset of the features that your website can manage. So you should only redirect your users to your mobile application when your mobile app can handle the feature. Okay. And if it's not possible, then you will automatically fall back on the website, which is obviously a less great experience, but still you will be able to provide to the user the feature. So the idea behind intent filters is that it's not actually tied to catching links. It's actually, or handling URLs. It's actually something completely general. It's a general intent filtering mechanism available starting Android 1.0. So I'm pretty sure that if you're an Android developer, you already know about it. As I said, it's not really tied to URL handling. It's actually something that is the glue in Android. So it's basically what leverage you or allows you to communicate between Android components and apps like services, broadcast receivers, or content providers. And finally, this is actually, I think, the most important point. They are declared statically. What does that mean? That means that basically they are defined at compile time. So what's the idea behind that? First, it means that you have to have like a fixed list of all the links that you can handle in your application, so that the system can know those links without having to start in your application. Okay. So the idea is that even if you've downloaded the app but not started it, then the system will know that it can handle those links. Okay. On the other hand, that might be a problem. So let's say you have an application that requires you to log in before catching links, before being able to provide some features. Then you will say, I can't do that because those links are actually declared statically at compile time. Fortunately, intent filters can be enabled and disabled at runtime. So the idea would be to put all of the intent filters directly in the Android manifest. And once you're logged in, you can enable them at runtime in your application code. That's the idea. But basically, intent filters or URL handling is done obviously at compile time so that the system knows about it without having to start a process, of course. So prior starting to give you an example on how to catch this link, for instance, I think it's important to take a step back and understand what a URL looks like. So the anatomy, or how to break down a URL. So a URL in Android is mostly broke into three parts. The first one is called the scheme. So most developers will also call that the protocol. So in this case, the protocol here is HTTPS, but it could be HTTP or FTP or I don't know, whatever. You can put whatever you want, actually. The second part is the one after the colon // In this case, it's called the host. Most developers will call that the domain, but it's actually a little bit different because the domain would only be trainline.eu, and the host also includes the subdomain. Okay, so there is a tiny difference here. So here the host is www.trainline.eu. And after that, you have what is called the path, and the path may contain several stuff like words separated by slashes, and it may also contain a query param, for instance. In this case, the path is /search/Nantes/Paris. Nantes is where I live, so it's two cities. So basically, the search part of the path is the action, and then you have some optional arguments. In this case, is the departure station and the arrival station. Okay, and you will see that the path always starts with the slash here, and that wasn't the case for the host. The host is only the part between the slashes, but the path contains the first slash. So now let's try to create an intent filter that catches this link. So the idea is basically this. So we have an intent filter that contains first an action. So in Android, an action is what defines what's the purpose of this intent filter or this intent. So in this case, when you're catching URLs in Android, it will always be view, action.view. Okay, so here I define an action tag, and the name is android.intent.action.view. Okay, then you have two categories. So the first one is mandatory, and it's called default. So you will see why is it mandatory? If it is mandatory, why do I have to put that inside? Well, that's because, as I said, intent filters are not only for URL catching. It may be used for some other purposes. But in the case of URL handling, you always have to have the default category. And that's because by default, Android, when you start an activity, treat all intents as if they contain the default category. And the second one, once again, is mandatory if you want to catch URLs, and it's called browsable. Okay, the category browsable. And what it does is that basically it informs the system that your activity is safe to be opened from the outside world. Okay, so why is that mandatory? Well, that's because, let's say you catch, I don't know, google.com/remove my account. You don't want the user to lose his account just by clicking on a link. Okay, so just by putting this, you inform the system that, hey, it's safe to click on this link and to open this link directly, because I won't be doing anything damaging to the user's data or to the application. And then comes the data tags. The data tags are basically what defines the URLs that you want to catch. So in our case, we wanted to catch HTTPS, the HTTPS scheme. So we used only the scheme XML attribute. And then we want to catch the host, which is www.trainline.eu. And then we want to catch the path, a special type of path. In our case, I was said, the idea is really to catch /search/something. So what we will do here is that we will use /search as a path. So /search is a valid URL. And we also want to catch everything that starts with /search/ plus something, okay? So that's the idea of having two data here. The first one only catch /search, and the second one here, the path prefix, catches /search/something. And we really have to do that. You could say, hey, why have we could have used only path prefix /search, but the thing is, if I was doing that, /search foo would have matched. Okay, we don't want /search foo without the slash, the trailing slash, to match. So we really need to do that. You can also use path pattern in intent filters, but you can go to the documentation. You can also have a meme type and a port if you want. But basically, when you're catching links, that's basically it. So you can tell me that's that simple? Well, actually, in real life, it's not that simple. Why? Because in real life, you have legacy, you have multiple domains, you have subdomains, and you have to handle all of that. And for instance, in the case of Trainline, the intent filters are actually more like this. Okay, they're not really different from what we've seen before, but let's look into what's really different here. So first, we can find that there is several domains at Trainline. So trainline.eu is for Europe, but obviously we have special domains for all countries. So in our case here, we have one for Germany, Spain, France, and Italy. And we also, by default, we want to match the HTTPS scheme. But we also handle some other links. And for instance, you can type in the address bar, for instance, http ://trainline.eu without the www. So because we want to catch that directly in the app without having to round trip between the server and the application, we can directly catch that in the Android manifest. So the idea here is just to prevent bouncing, because we know that the server will redirect directly trainline.eu to www.trainline.eu will redirect to the www variant. We know that it's not necessary to like open Chrome. Chrome will redirect you to the correct link and then open the app directly. So instead of bouncing like this, you can directly put that in your manifest. You can also see that there is some legacy here because the old name of Trainline before the acquisition was Captain Train, and before that it was even Capitaine Train in French. So we've decided to get rid of the old name because it was 2 years old, but Captain Train is still in the manifest because you still want to be able to catch like old links that would have been issued in the past. So that's pretty much it in the Android manifest. You don't have anything else to do. But once you've done that, you have to go to your activity and catch, well, the data that is actually inside of the URL, because you want to deal with that data. So in our case, we want to search from one city to another, okay? So let's go into the Java code. In this case, what I'm doing here is that I'm creating two lists. The first one is called the scheme lists. And this schemes list only contains the valid scheme, so HTTP or HTTPS, okay? And then we have a list of authorities, which contains all of the valid authorities, which authorities is a synonym for hosts, okay? And finally, we have a constant for the path that will be the search path. Just one question for Java developers. Do you know why we have like a collection.unmodifiable list wrapping the arrays.as list? Because I've seen a lot of code out there that are only using arrays.as list, but please keep in mind that arrays.as list is not an unmodifiable. You can't add item to a list created with that method, but you can actually set some values in it. So if you really want to have like something that can't be modified, you have to wrap it in a unmodifiable list. So that was the constant part. So basically we're defining constants. And then let's go to the activity, because this is what Android will be doing. It will start an activity and it will give you the link that was clicked. And you have to parse that link to basically extract the important information in it. So you will be called obviously in onCreate, just like regular Android. And in onCreate, what you will do is that you will, you can see here that you will get the URL that was clicked just by using the data in the intent. So get intent.getData will give you the URL that was clicked. So what we do here, we will first check if it matches the authorities and the schemes, okay? Why do we do that? Because, well, this activity could be started without clicking on a link too. So we need to deal with several ways of starting the activity, either by starting with a link or either by just tapping on the icon on the launcher. Okay, so we first check that the authorities and schemes are contained in the authorities and schemes list, and if it does, then we will parse the list, the path basically. So we will get the path. We will check that the segments in the path are exactly the size of 3, and if they do, we will make sure that the first one is search, because we only want to deal with search / departure city, arrival city. And if it starts with search, then we can get the arrival and departure, okay? And once we've done that, we can start the search. That's pretty much it. So what we've done here is just parsing a link, okay? So the code is pretty, well, it's a lot of boilerplate, but parsing is like, yeah, boring. That's what was done here. How, from a user standpoint, what does it do? Well, let's say that my wife is sending me an email. Let me train like that for you. So she's sending me this email to start a search for a train going from Nantes to Paris. So if I click on it, then the system will display that. Why? Because, well, there is 2 applications that can handle this link. The first one is obviously Trainline, because we've defined that in the Android manifest using the intent filter. But the second one is Chrome, because it's just an HTTPS link. Chrome can handle everything that starts with HTTPS. So I click on open with trainline.eu and I end up with this. So the search activity gets displayed with the fields pre-populated with the stations that were actually inside the link. Okay, that's pretty much it. There is one problem in that. I mean, from a user standpoint, I guess this problem is pretty boring. The fact that you have, every time that you're clicking on an application, a link that starts with http trainline.eu/search/ something, you will have to choose whether you want to open with Trainline or whether you want to open with Chrome. So it's pretty boring. There is several ways to prevent that. The first one is obviously, as a user, you can click on always here. If you click on always, then the system won't be asking you over again. You can also make the intent filter more specific, okay? Like starting with a custom scheme, like for instance, Trainline : / something. But the problem with that is that it used to be the case before because iOS was using the exact same schemes, for instance. But now that we can do complete URL matching in Android and iOS, I guess it's not the correct way to do that. And more specifically, I think starting with a Trainline : / something is not something good, because on desktop it won't work. It's not like it's a valid URI, but it's not something that is, you know, matching people expectations. So obviously that's not a correct solution. Hopefully there is a solution for that. It's called app links. So, and that's called also Apple App Site Association on iOS. So it's available on iOS 9 and above. And it's basically what it will do is that, let's say that I have an email like that contains a link. If I click on this link, by default, without having app links enabled, I will have this chooser, and then I will open the application. So the idea is really to remove the chooser in the middle. Okay. So how can we do that? Well, first, we can do that only on Marshmallow and above. So you will say, hey, how can I do that before? Well, you can't. The thing is, you will see that it's really simple to do, so you should definitely do that in your application. What it does is that it prevents the open with dialogue, so making the communication between your website or an email or whatever directly to your application really, really transparent. And finally, what it does is that it considers your app, your mobile app and your website as a single entity. As I said at the beginning, this single entity is basically your product. Okay? So what do I have to change in order to do that? You will see that it's really simple to do. So I go back to the Android manifest and I look at my intent filter. Here you will see that it contains everything that was before, so the same action view, which is mandatory if we want to do that, the same category with browsable, the same HTTP and HTTPS schemes. So just one quick note here, you can only do that on HTTP and HTTPS. If you're trying to do app links with FTP, it won't work because it's only working on HTTP and HTTPS. So you will say there is nothing new in here. Well, actually there is one thing that is new from what we've seen before. And this is this Android auto-verify equals true. That wasn't the case before. So what's the purpose of this? So if you go to the Android manifest documentation, you won't have any documentation about this because it hasn't been added. I don't know why. But you have to go to the r.attribute documentation because this one is obviously the Java doc and it contains the documentation about auto-verify. But basically what it does is that it tells the system that once you've installed the app, it should go and check that the app is associated with the website. So it does the verification, the link verification is done at app install, not at app startup or when the application gets started for the first time. And it consists on verifying that all of the hosts that you've defined in your Android manifest are actually belonging to you. So basically that your application and your websites are the same entities, okay? So what it will do, under the hood, the system will do that. It will basically go to those links. So it will always go to https : It will replace the host with the host that you've put inside the intent filter, and then it will go to something called well-known asset links. So let's deep dive into that. So why HTTPS? Well, because Android and in general the IT world now considers that everything should be done in HTTPS. So it will always try to ping your website using HTTPS. Okay. Then it will replace the host, as I said, with the host that you're trying to associate with. And finally, it will go to what is called a fixed well-known location. So I don't know if you're familiar with .well-known location, but it's basically an RFC. It's called, let me check, it's a 5785 RFC. So you can go to the internet to check the RFC, but basically what it contains is, it contains site-wide policy information or metadata that are associated to your domain. Okay. So it will go to this link, and for instance, for Apple App Site Association, it will be in the same directory but called Apple-app-site.association, and it will be a JSON file. And then you have to make sure that your server is serving this always as a content type application JSON, okay, and that all responses should be 200. So what I mean by 200 is very important. So if you try to redirect, for instance, so 300 something, 301 or 302 or something, it won't work because Android is really expecting to have like HTTP 200. Okay, so beware of this. If it's not working, it's probably because, well, you're doing a redirect or having a different response code like 400 something or 500 something. So in our case, what Android will do at install time, it will go through this list of links, and it will check the files asset links.json. So it will go through all of the domains that I had in my intent filters and make sure that they all reply with 200 response code, that the content type is JSON, and that they contain some information that is making sure that the app and the website are the same entity. And this file, this assets links.json, is actually a digital asset links JSON file. So you can go to developers.google.com/digital asset links, and you will get the documentation about that. But basically, what it is a list of blocks, and each block defines a source, a relationship, and a target. So the source, in our case, is the website. The relationship here is how you delegate something to the target, and the target will be our Android application. Okay, so let's deep dive into that. So the source is obviously the one containing the file. So in our case, it's the website. The website will delegate the permission to handle URLs to the target, which is in our case an Android app. Okay, and this Android app is defined with a package name, com.captaintrain.android, and a fingerprint, which is a SHA-256, which can be, we'll see later how we can get this SHA, but basically it's a target. It defines a target, so a platform and a package name. In case of iOS, so you can replace the namespace with iOS app, and you won't have package name, but we will have the app ID, which is basically the app ID that you can find on iTunes. Okay. Just one quick note here. You can see that it's an array, so you can put several fingerprints in it. But believe me, I encourage you not to do that. Actually, it's only syntactic sugar, so if you put several fingerprints in it, it will be like having several blocks with the same relationship, with the same target, but a different fingerprint. So I would recommend having several blocks. And this can be done actually for, so you can have like this block, so you can have several apps that are pointing to the same domain. So for instance, the books application, so Google Books points to Play Store, the play.google.com. If you go to the movies app, Google Movie app, it also points to the same domain, which is play.google.com. So you can have one app that targets several apps that target the same domain, but you can have also several apps that target a single domain or several domains. It's completely possible, and that's the case, for instance, in Trainline, because we have trainline.eu, trainline.de, trainline.fr. They all point to the same application. So how can you get the fingerprint? Well, that's pretty much known normally to Android developers. You can use the key tool utility software. And once you've done that, you can make sure that everything is working correctly. And I encourage you to use this. So the URL is pretty long, but basically it's digitalassetlinks.googleapi.com/v1/statements, and you can test if your website is handling app links correctly. So in this case, you can see, I don't know if you can see correctly, but it says that there is no errors here, so errors none, which means that it is working. So basically, when I will be installing the application, the system will know that the website and the app are the same entity. And you can go to the settings application. You can click on open by default here, and you will see that it contains actually an item which is called supported links. And if you click on supported links here, you should end up with a dialog that displays all of the links that will redirect directly to this application without displaying the chooser. Okay? So in our case, it's all of the domains, all of the hosts that we've defined before. So that makes the experience from the web or from an email or from an SMS or whatever to your application really, really transparent and really, really quick. The thing is, it's working only if your application is already installed. If it's not installed, then the user will be redirected directly to the website because, well, the system doesn't know about your application. So what you can do to engage your users and to inform your users about the existence of a mobile application is to use what we called the Related Apps Banner. There is an equivalent once again on iOS, which is called Smart App Banners, which is available since a long time. I think it's iOS 6. So the idea is basically this. So what you will do is that when the user is going to your website, you will have like a small banner at the bottom that indicates that there is an application that, a mobile application that is doing the exact same stuff, okay? So if we look closer, here it's just a banner from the Google Play Store, and it gives you the opportunity to install it. So I'm going to trainline.eu, and I can install directly the mobile application. So I can inform the users that it's probably better to use the mobile app because it contains features and it's more easy to use as mobile users. So this feature is available on Chrome 44 and above. Just for the note, it's actually a version that has been released in July 2015. So it's almost 2 years ago. So you can consider that everybody has at least Chrome 44 because we are currently at Chrome 58. So it's a long time ago. It's really easy to add to your website, so please do it. It's 2 lines of code, as we will see in the following slides. It's also a great way to know, because as a developer, you can't know if, when you're, as a web developer, you can't know, you are not able to know if the application, the associated application is installed or not. Chrome can do that, so please use that, because it's the correct way to do it. And finally, it's only displayed when appropriate. So we will see what appropriate means when we talk about related app banners. So how can we do that? Well, first, you have to serve your website once again as HTTPS. That's something that will be more and more common in the future, so please make sure that your website is served as HTTPS. And then what you will have to do is just to add this in your HTML source code of your website. It's just to add a link to a JSON file that is called manifest.json. So what does this file contains? Well, it contains some JSON information, obviously, that defines your application. In it, you will find an icon, a bunch of icons, like icons for this size, which is 144, but you can have several sizes. It will also contain a short name, which is the name of your application. In our case, it's Trainline EU for Europe. And it also contains this flag, which is the important flag. Prefer related application set to true. So by default, if you don't have this flag, it's false. If you set it to false, it's false, obviously. But the idea of this flag is that it says to the user agent, so basically Chrome, that if there is a related application, then it's probably better to display that you should download this related application, okay? And how can we define those related application? Well, in a related application blocks. And it's an array, so you can put several inside. In our case, what we do is that we use the platform play to means that it's the application is available on the Play Store, and the ID is basically the package name or the application ID. In this case, com.captaintrain.com.android. It's also supposed to work on iOS, and the platform will be iTunes, and the ID will be the app ID. Okay. Sorry, no, the ID will be the URL instead of the app ID. So the URL directly to your application on iTunes. If you want the documentation about how you can, deal with manifest for your web application, then you can go to this link. So if you do that, well, you're done. Most of the time, when you will try that, you will be like, what the fuck? Nothing is being displayed. That's because the heuristic behind this is pretty complex. So if you look at the documentation, you will have that. So the user has visited. So the banner is only displayed when the user has visited your site twice over 2 separate days during the course of 2 weeks. Sorry. So it took me like 3 times to. Like 3 minutes to understand. I read it 3 times in a row to understand, but that's really, really important. So if the visitor is not visiting your website twice over 2 separate days during the course of 2 weeks, nothing will be displayed. So as a developer, that's pretty boring. Obviously, and unfortunately, there is a dev option for that, and this dev option There is one actually for everything, and this dev option can be enabled just going to this link. So Chrome flags bypass app banner engagement checks. If you click on that, then the banner will be always displayed. So as a developer, it's pretty handy. Okay. So what's the idea behind that? So you will say that's a pretty complicated heuristic. The thing is, this could change. I mean, Google is opening that in Chrome, but this could change in the future if everything is going well. So we could, I don't know, in the future end up with the banner always displayed the first time the user is going to your website. I don't know, but we will see. The thing is, it's not up to you. It's really up to Chrome to display this app banner. So as a user point of view, what we will have is this. So we will have like this, we're going to trendline.eu, we have the banner, we can click on install, and we will be able to install the app directly from Chrome, not having to go to the Play Store. So no redirection to the user, everything is completely transparent. You click on install, you can continue reading your website, everything is happening on the background, and when it's done, you can open the app directly from Chrome. So either by clicking on the notification or by clicking on open in Chrome. That's awesome. I mean, you're informing and promoting your application directly from the website with only 1 or 2 lines of code. So please do it. I mean, it's really, really simple. So now that now we have an application that can handle links from your website. So we have the Android app that can handle links from your website. We'll also have the website that promotes your mobile application. But sometimes you have websites that need credentials. So for instance, I don't know, if you're going to trendline.eu, for instance, you have to be logged in. So if you redirect your user directly from a logged in website to an unlogged application, it could be a problem for the user because he or she will have to re-enter his credential. Fortunately, there is some features for that. On Android, that is called Smart Lock for Password. Okay, so the idea is to retrieve credentials from the web directly on Android. There is an equivalent once again on iOS, which is called Shared Web Credential. The idea is to get the credentials from Safari directly inside your application, your iOS application. So how can we do that in Android? Unfortunately, I would say we have to use Google Play services. So why I'm saying unfortunately, it's because there is a lot of code, boilerplate code, but you will see that it's quite simple. So in our case, what we want to do is that whenever the application is started, we want to check if there is a credential associated to this application to be able to auto-connect the user without, completely transparently. So what we will do is that we will create a Google API client using the Credential API. Okay, here we have the API. And then it's pretty, if you're an Android developer, you already know about the connection callbacks and connection fail listener. And then we will be called in the on-connected callback. So once we've connected to the Google Play services, what we can do is that we will request some credential. So we create a credential request. So basically we want email and password, couples, okay? And we will request this credential. We set the callback as mRequest callback, and if we go to the mRequest callback, which is at the bottom of the slide, we just check the status. If the status is okay, then we have the credential and we can log in directly. If not, we have to resolve the results. So let's consider the case when we have the credentials directly. What we have to do is just to sign in. What we do here, we get the ID, which is the email in our case, and we get the password, and we can sign in directly, completely transparently. So the user has nothing to do, it will be auto-connected, okay? And you can see that there is another line here called Disable Auto Sign-In. So as I said, the idea is to auto-login. But if you do that completely in a stupid manner, I would say, you may end up in an auto-login loop. So let's say, for instance, you auto-login, you log out as a user, you will be auto-logged in once again, you log out, and you will be once again auto-logged in. So that's the reason why the API in Google Play Services offers you this disable auto sign-in, and disable auto sign-in will prevent you from doing this loop, okay? Because it won't do the auto-login automatically the next time you're logging out. In the case of a problem, basically a problem is you have several credentials for the same website, then you have to resolve this problem. What you will do is pretty common in Google Play services. You just have to start resolution for results, and once it's done, you will be called in on-activity result. And in this case, you will be called with the correct credential. So basically, the user will have chosen the correct account, and you will be given the credential for that account. So what it looks like in real life is this. So in this case, on the left, we have auto logged in. So I start the application, and at the bottom, we have like a sheet that gets displayed, a blue rectangle that gets displayed by SmartLock for password that says, I found the account for this. It's Cyril at captaintrain.com, and I'm auto logging in with it. In this case, it's when I have to resolve the result, and that's because I have two credentials for the same application. So I have, as a user, I have to choose between those two accounts, and when it's done, you will be auto-logged in too. So that's the auto login part. But obviously, if you're, I don't know, if you can connect correctly, or if you are creating an account on Android or changing the password, you have to modify those credentials, okay? And this can be done once again with SmartLock for password just by using the save method. So instead of doing a credential request, you will create a credential and you will save it here. You can look at the callback. If it's success, then you can display whatever or be completely silent. I mean, normally it should be silent, I would say, as a user point of view, because it doesn't matter if it's been saved or not from a user point of view. And if not, you have to resolve once again the problem. And that's what you will get displayed most of the time. So the first time you're trying to save a credential to your application, you will have the exact same kind of pop-up or dialogue that you have on Chrome, for instance. Do you want to save this password? Yes or no? And if I click on save here, the next time I'm logging out, going back of the application and logging in, it will be auto-logged in. There is a final case that you need to handle. It's when you're trying to auto-log in, so SmartLock for password will give you some credential. You sign in with your server, and your server says, I don't know this account, or the password has changed or something. So it means that there is like no synchronization between what is stored in Google Play, the SmartLock for password, and what's on your website. So you have to be able to delete credentials, okay? And you can do that just by using delete in the API. So what we've done here is that we've saved some passwords on Android, and we can retrieve them whenever we're going back to the application. But we want to be able to get the credential directly from Chrome. So how can we do that? Well, the idea, once again, is to associate the application with the website. And this has been done before using digital asset links. So what we will do is we will go back to our digital asset links on our server, and we will delegate or add a new relation. And this new relation is called get login creds. Okay, just by doing that, you allow the website to share credential to the application. And we end up with this. It's completely transparent. So you could say that it would be really, really nice if, I don't know, the user is installing the Android app for the first time and then going to the web. You want the credentials saved on Android to be available on the web. That would be awesome. Well, the thing is, it's possible too. And once again, the idea is to associate the application with the website. We've done that, but not completely. What we've done is we've associated the website with the Android application. What we want to do right now is to associate the Android app with the website, so the other way around. So how can we do that? We'll just put a metadata in the Android manifest, okay? And this metadata will point to a resource here, which is called SmartLock Asset Statement. You can name it as you want, but the idea is really to put this inside your string. So this string is obviously not translatable, so you can put translatable false to make sure that it's not translated. And it contains some JSON code in XML, so that's why we have that kind of escaping characters. It's pretty boring, but the idea is that we say to the Android system that the asset links or the information about how I can what I can share to the website is stored on trainline.eu/wellknown/assetlinks.json. So it's the exact same file that we've done before, but we will put some information to say, hey, the Android application can share or can delegate some permission to the website. And what we will do is that we will just add some blocks. So in this case, what we do is that we say that the source is delegating to the target. So the source is the Android app, is delegating the get login credential to the target, which is the website. Okay? That's pretty much it. And if you go to for instance, the one from trainline.eu, you will see that there is several blocks because we have several domains. So the app delegates to trainline.de, to the trainline.fr, to trainline.eu. So we have several blocks, but that's the exact same thing. And once it's done, you can go back to Chrome, go to trainline.eu, try to connect, and you will have this credential automatically proposed to you. And that's because you've shared credential between your Android application and your website. As you can see here, it's really coming from an Android application. So that means it's coming from the Android app with the package name here. So that's really something that makes the communication between websites and mobile application really transparent and really easy. So we're pretty much going to the end of this talk. There is several other stuff that I wanted to talk about, but we don't have time. So let's go quickly about on this. So another great way to tear down the walls between your application and your website is to use app indexing. So app indexing is basically Google search in native applications. So you can find your app directly in Google search results. Okay, so please make sure to have a look at that. Another interesting thing is Firebase dynamic links. So the idea is to have post-install deferred links. So let's say, for instance, you're searching for a Warsaw to Paris train. If you don't have the app installed, you will be redirected to the Play Store. You will install the app, and then most of the time you won't have anything from the link used. So you will have the application displayed, but nothing pre-populated. So the idea with Firebase dynamic links is to give you the information that was actually available before you installed the application. So you will end up with Warsaw to Paris directly pre-populated after install. So you can go to this website here to get more information about this new capabilities in Firebase. There is another one that is interesting, but only for app messaging application, which is called App Preview Messaging, which is in preview. So App Preview Messaging in preview. So it's not accessible right now, but the idea is really that, let's say your I don't know, WhatsApp, for instance, and you're sending a WhatsApp message to someone who doesn't have WhatsApp. Well, normally it won't work because you won't be able to do that. But with App Preview Messaging, you will be able to display the message and offer the ability to install it. And finally, for me, which is the best solution to tear down the walls between your website and your native application, it's called Android Instant App. So at the beginning, to be completely honest, the idea of this talk was to talk about Instant App because it has been announced a year ago, but we don't have access to the documentation yet. So I hope that it will change like next week when we will have Google I/O. But the idea is really to have the native application directly displayed when you're clicking on a link. So for instance, you're in I don't know, on a website, you click on trainline.eu/search or something, and you get the application even if it's not installed on your application on your Android device. So if you want to sum up, please make sure that you keep that in mind. Links are not web only. Links are completely universal now, and you need to make sure that your application is able to handle them. It's really the glue between your components, your entities, that make your product. Don't be afraid or lazy. As I've shown you, so we've talked about this for 45 minutes, but basically it's 10 or 100 lines of code at maximum. So please do that because it's really easy. And I would like to thank you for attending this session. If you have any question, please feel free to come. Thank you.